in a discussion about critical area code. So if, with your guys' permission, we'd like to take that last.
Definitely.
So we will jump in.
Is he will join us?
He is, he plans to join us. We'll see if he gets here before we get all of our other business done first. We have Ms. Archer. You want to come join us?
Mayor?
So I'm going to tee this up with Charlie first.
Right, I'm going to ask if we could have training on social media first, because I would like to have Councilmember Diener here for the council endorsement policy.
Right.
If he makes it.
Okay. All right.
That doesn't mess you up too much, does it?
No.
Okay,
All right.
just want to make sure.
So we are pivoting again. So we are moving on to item C, which is the training on social media. Ms. Archer is going to lead that. That's something that she does every couple of years.
Yeah.
And I don't have a social media account, but many of you guys do. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Wonderful. Brandy, oh, there it is. Perfect. So this is the same. This PowerPoint should look familiar to you. I think I did this training or a similar version of this training a couple years ago. And at that time, looking back at the training, we did not yet have the decision in the case we're going to talk about. And we've spoken about this case since it came out in 2023. We've spoken about it a couple of times as a council. But this is just a refresher training that I always like to utilize for my elected officials, particularly when we're in an election year, because social media usage, all aspects of it, create legal, there's potential legal issues associated with it. As this is an open session, I'm not going to dive too deep into the legal risk part of the analysis and more focus on just sort of the legal expectations. And then the consequences of that are something we could talk about in an executive session or offline if there are questions about consequences of certain activities. So again, just a quick refresher. Existing city policies, I believe I circulated them, but I can circulate them in the packet, but I can circulate them again. These are the policies that we have pertaining to one specifically to the police department and then one for general city personnel. The use of social media coordinators, they govern account and access control. These are all primarily designed for staff's use. They're not designed for elected officials' use. But you will use social media in your work as an elected official. So there are a couple of key issues we want to talk about when we talk about using your personal and professional social media accounts to the extent you have one or both or neither. So we're going to talk about what personal versus city business looks like, particularly under the Public Records Act. Then we're going to talk about other issues that arise when you use social media to disseminate information about city business or city activities. We'll talk very briefly about the free speech public forum issues that arise with social media and the Lynn Key versus Freed decision we got from the U.S. Supreme Court in 2023. And then we'll touch on very briefly on use of public facilities, PDC, which will hopefully be a nice lead into our next conversation as well. All right, so I think a key takeaway from the Lynn Key versus Freed decision is when it comes to forums and the First Amendment analysis that I had been teaching, that others had been advising on from Ninth Circuit precedents, Lynn Key versus Freed completely changed that. And it essentially said, unless you are directed, unless someone says to Councilmember Trenary, you shall post this, all of the activity you have on social media is likely not the act of the agency. So the big caveat and why I start with the Public Records Act is Lynn Key versus Freed has nothing to do with the Public Records Act in Washington. And so the direction that we give to you under the Public Records Act as it relates to your obligations to retain and provide and search your social media remains the same, and it is far more, restrictive is not the right word, but far more, places far more of an obligation on you as an individual to comply with the law based on your use of social media. So the key case we have in Washington that says your social media use can be considered a public record comes out of West versus City of Puyallup. And there the court specifically said that a public official's post on a personal Facebook page, so not a public Facebook page, a personal Facebook page, can actually constitute the agency's public records. So City of Port Orchard Public Records, when you have done certain things, when the post relates to the conduct of government and is prepared within your official scope of employment or capacity. And the court went on to be very specific about what that test looks like. So scope of employment, it's easier for our employees who have a job description that explains it. Your scope of employment as an official is far broader than anything we can describe. But for the most part, you are doing things in furtherance of your constituents and in furtherance of the city. Official capacity for elected officials, it's essentially any record that you have prepared in your official capacity. This one again is still pretty nebulous, doesn't really tell us exactly what could be a public record. But if you have acted in a way that furthers the city's interest or furthers your personal interest as a representative of the city, then we start to talk about that this post itself is a government job or a government speech as it relates to the Public Records Act. So in the West versus City of Puyallup case, the public official was providing information about public meetings. So she was using her personal social media page that she did not identify herself as a councilwoman on, but she was reposting notices about public meetings and just disseminating them out for the rest of her followers. She wasn't directed to do that. She was, again, one single councilwoman doing this, and she was merely providing that information to the public. And the court said that was not a public record in that situation. So from this case, we can determine that if you are not directed to make a post and you are merely passing along information, it is unlikely that that is a public record, but we can't guarantee that it's not, depending on that benefiting the city factor. So in that case, it was very clear that she was doing this to generally benefit her community, and getting more engagement was a benefit, but it wasn't necessarily directly tied to a specific benefit she was garnering from that specific post. So the analysis, if you take away nothing else from this, the analysis under the Public Records Act as to your social media account is going to be fact specific to the particular post. And that's why we, public records officers, legal counsel, give you a very broad request that you retain everything, because we don't honestly know what potentially could be seen as a public record. When you are using social media to post and to engage with the public using your council member identification, identifying yourself as a council member, or engaging with the public and sharing information that the city has posted, sharing links, or engaging in dialogue about city events or city legislation that's pending before you. You know, honestly, we recommend that you retain everything and that you provide it to us in the event that we ask for our request, because the Public Records Act, again, does not change under Linkey versus Freed. And until we get legislative changes, the guidance is relatively nebulous. Looks like you had a question. No? Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so anything that the city posts on the government page or, you know, information, then it sounds like that lady did the exact same thing. It was already posted by the city, so why not post it again? So
She shared it.
Yeah, so that doesn't seem like that's a problem whatsoever.
My recommended takeaway from this is I'm not talking problem versus not problem. I'm talking about compliance with the Public Records Act. And so if you choose to share it, that is absolutely your right on your personal page. We then may ask you to provide a copy of that in response to a records request. So problem is the wrong word. It's merely giving yourself an obligation under our public records policies. So it's merely by choosing to forward or share, you've now obligated yourself to retain it under the public records policies. That's it. It's not a problem.
Right.
It's just
it's already out there anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this isn't in the slideshow, but I think I briefly spoke about a very recent case that we had, the Valderrama versus City of Sammamish. And so this case solidifies that you, as a council person, have personal liability if you don't respond to a public records request from the public records officer. So when we use the term problem, that would be the only problem. That case was the one that involved the WhatsApp program, the app. Council members were using WhatsApp to communicate with each other, and a former council member did a public records request because he knew those records existed. They don't have, I guess, WhatsApp, the retention is pretty quick. They go away pretty quickly. And so these council members are, I don't have these records, they're gone. The city avoided liability because it provided NISN affidavits. We've talked about this before. They're the affidavit when Brandy gets a request and she says, okay, council member, I need you to do this search and fill out this affidavit and signed it. The court said the city did what it was supposed to do by getting those NISN affidavits. That then turned the onus on the individual council member. So that's exactly what will happen. In the event we get a request for Facebook, Brandy will send you a NISN affidavit and a request for you to search. You fill that out and you give it back to her. And if you've retained any of the Facebook posts, you give her those to her as well. If you don't have any retained, you say, I do not have any responsive posts. But you then are responsible for that, not Brandy and not the city. And in the Valderrama City of Sammamish case, gosh, that was in November, the court specifically said, well, Valderrama, the plaintiff, said, I don't believe these affidavits are true. I think these were not done in good faith. These people are lying. And the court said the city does not have to do a forensic search of your Facebook, or in that case, their phones and their WhatsApp. We can rely, unless we have actual evidence of bad faith, we can rely on those affidavits. So, sorry for that divergence, but it's a brand new case, and it's really important for us to all
Should
understand.
nothing come of that? Because the burden of proof would be on,
The plaintiff,
Plaintiff to
correct,
say-
and he did not have
and
adequate.
he doesn't have the
But it's on
ability to
appeal
check
now.
WhatsApp, right?
Correct,
Like,
yeah. It's on appeal. I think he has extensive funds, and so I think he's doing
Just show him play that game. Okay.
subpoenas to
Mhm.
tech companies and things like that. I don't know if WhatsApp's data is stored in some, you don't know, but yeah, so it's now on appeal to the State Supreme Court, or they're seeking review, so.
Regarding the woman who shared an existing city post, if she took a screenshot of her share and she emailed it to her city account, would that satisfy recording the record for city posterity?
No, so we are now obligated to retain metadata to the extent we can, and to the extent we get a request. And social media metadata, cell phone metadata from your text messages, things that at one point, seemed like extravagant expenses for us to maintain, is now a basic cost expectation.
What is Facebook metadata?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
and if someone asked for it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to provide I don't think anyone would know how to
Right,
provide
right.
it.
Like a screenshot of just the image,
It's not searchable. so
Yeah,
you couldn't find
it's
it
not
in that
necessarily
way.
searchable, but it's not necessarily, I think we would still want you to do the affidavit and say that this is the complete post, but I would be worried that there'd be pieces lost. You know how you can condense the comments, you can expand the comments. If you were to somehow preserve it in its original format in a screenshot, then arguably we've met our production obligation, but my understanding is that's rarely occurring in most agencies. I don't know if it is here, I haven't talked to Brandy, but we can actually look at an example if you have one that you wanted to vet or something like that offline.
Well, no, yeah, I was just thinking in that case, that all that lady did was share an existing post to her own following in a sense, so.
Yeah, and the court said, based on those specific facts, they did the analysis as to whether she derived benefit, whether she'd been requested. So if all those boxes are ticked, then that is not the court said that's not a public record. But if you added any commentary, for example, so you say, sharing this, tonight we're gonna be talking about this important legislation, that would change the analysis, right, if you added a comment on the bottom. So I can't say 100% merely sharing posts from the city moves you outside the realm of the Public Records Act, because there are so many nuances to it, and that's why we typically recommend you retain them all. Yeah. And turn off your auto-delete features to the extent Facebook has those. Yeah.
So that was my question.
Yeah.
I don't believe Facebook has any auto-delete status. I think you can go back and find your stuff from day one.
Day one.
So there shouldn't be any issue as long as and they have a search function. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I just didn't know if you knew that there was or was not.
I don't know that for sure.
In your experience or research that you've seen.
My nodding is more of, that sounds reasonable to me. I do not know, I'm not.
But if you delete.
If you actively delete something,
stuff,
sure. But
But then
I
you
don't
run
think I've
down
got
that
that
road
problem.
of how,
Yeah.
was it?
Right.
You know, it's-
Right, exactly, yeah. Okay, so, again, always happy to talk about specific posts, and we can use those as models, but, you know, the main thrust of the case is, was there a derived benefit from the individual posting this, and was there direction or some form of council-specific input on the post that benefits the city? If those boxes are ticked, then we are retaining. It's so vague, we suggest you retain everything. That's just the Public Records Act piece. So just a reminder on that. The other legal issues that pop up when we deal with social media, just a few of them to flag, and we've talked about these before. We utilize SeeClickFix in your city for people to report public works issues. The police department, they tell you to call 911. People don't necessarily care, and they will post on your social media account, someone's robbing my house. That can trigger a reporting obligation depending on the nature of the communication and the reasonable expectation of us being able to assist. So one of the reasons that we recommend deactivating comments on city-specific websites is because of this. They're not monitored 24 hours. They can't be tracked in that way. So just as an FYI, and to ensure that everyone is cognizant of this, if you know about something, please report it as quickly as you know about it, because if it's on your social media, then there could potentially be an inference that the city knew about it. So just don't hold that information to yourself.
How do we get around that when we take open public comment on things like the comp plan? How is that treated disparately from, say, social media?
So that's probably, I mean, quasi-judicial proceedings is a flavor of that, but are you referring to memorializing the comments that we received?
Yeah, and so somebody says somebody's robbing my house on that. It's on a...
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So there's an actual portal for folks to report comments. Yeah, so those portals are monitored, right? Just like SeeClickFix is monitored, and so they're routed in the same way.
What is,
And we try to use disclaimers. I'm not sure if we did
I
for the
think we were told just recently the SeeClickFix is about a week behind.
Right, absolutely.
So that's still considered monitored.
Still considered monitored, yeah.
Okay. So even if we did that here at the city, on say a Facebook account, if we monitored it 48, Monday through Friday, we'd still be within our same scope. So we could technically have comments turned on.
With very adequate and robust disclaimers, and then with turning comments on, there's a whole other variety of legal issues as well. So this is just merely one of them.
Yeah, when turning comments on, what is, like, Kitsap County, people post comments, the school boards, school district, people post comments. From what I understand, there's only 3 cities in the state that don't allow comments. We're one of the 3. I personally care less if we allow comments or not. What makes us different than all these other cities that allow comments? Or school
You're
districts
a
that
lawyer.
that allow comments?
Yeah, I would push back on the 3.
I was so told.
Okay.
That's why I said what I was told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
absolutely.
there's several that
Yeah, as
don't
far as I
allow
understand it,
comments.
I think it's absolutely a risk reduction tool that agencies are utilizing.
So school districts, as example, I'm gonna use our own, they allow questions, they allow statements, comments. The county does as well. I think Farmington does also, but,
Do
so
they-
they're all taking a big risk, big liability.
Well, I would say from the legal expectation standpoint, then there must be something happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of. Someone must be monitoring it, someone must be taking those steps.
We've got staff resources.
Yeah, they must have staff resources allocated to it.
Yeah, I mean, because like, if someone goes on there, say, 10 at night, Southeast School District 1, Amy Miller's sleeping, right? She's
Right.
one monitors,
Right.
And someone says, there's an emergency or whatever, she's not on there relaying messages.
Right.
Is that liability for the school district? And I'm only using them as an example, I can care less the name is the body.
Right.
Is that a liability for that agency?
I can say that there is legal precedence for a failure to act when you've been notified of something.
I would imagine the larger, like the school district and probably the county, they have multiple people monitoring.
Or they have teams, yeah, we have teams,
They
yeah.
don't have communicators, just our
Yeah.
full-time.
Right, exactly. I think it's more of a split, I can get some data for you, but I think it's a mechanism to avoid legal risk.
Sure.
Yeah. So quasi judicial proceedings, we've talked about these, we've had a few, where you are sitting in a quasi judicial posture because you're approving a site-specific rezone of a parcel, or you're hearing some other form of a land use that's specific to a particular property. And when we go through that process and you sit in that posture, you have to be unbiased. So just like a judge can't have any contacts with either the defendant or the prosecutor, you can't have any contacts with either side about the topic. And if you do have contacts with either side, we have to go through that disclosure process. I don't believe we've done that here, but in an open meeting, you have to tell us every contact you've had. So social media can implicate this if it's a hotly contested site-specific rezone and the public wants to reach you, they'll go through your social media and they'll comment multiple times and tell you, vote yes, vote no. Each and every one of those you'll have to disclose from the dais, and I've seen disclosure processes that take hours. So a preventative method is to, limit interaction or have disclaimers with regards to quasi-judicial proceedings. But it's something you just want to be aware of in your social media. Federally funded projects can also have limiters on the way that we can engage, whether it's the purchase of property, whether we can have engagements with individuals, or where we're working with a tribal entity or we're working with another government. Our interactions are monitored in ways that we may be dictated to, and social media can provide another way for people to get at you. So that's just another thing to flag. All right, so then very briefly, the free speech public forum aspect of this that Linkey versus Freed changed, and I flagged this at the beginning, but in Linkey versus Freed, a city manager in a Midwestern city had a personal social media account, but that was open to the public, so it wasn't locked down in any way. And he was sharing city-issued press releases on his personal page, and adding commentary, adding, please come to this meeting because of X reason. So he was engaging quite a bit with the subject matter, and again, he's the city manager. The U.S. Supreme Court clarified that in order for that account to be transformed into a public forum, there needs to be two thresholds met. One, that individual that is posting has to have actual government speaking authority on the topic being posted. And two, they use that social media authority in that specific posting. And for the purposes of a city council, where you are one of 7, none of you have speaking authority on anything. The council fully speaks together. So arguably, nothing you post will ever meet this test, because none of you have the authority to speak on anything. I'm going to put over here conversations we've had about choosing to speak and issues that can arise. But from an actual authority standpoint, none of you have the ability to meet that threshold. And the city manager doesn't even have that ability, because it's the full body, the legislative
It's a
body.
manager, not administrator.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
an administrator would have a different,
No. An administrator is more of a figurehead. A manager is actually the counterpart.
speaking,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm. But in this case, he did not have that actual authority, the court found.
How do you get out good information though, so the public is aware of, so they can come to a city council meeting, so they can get more engaged? It sounds like our hands are kind of tied, that we can't, or this guy that, doesn't have that authority, because everything that's just posted on the, even our government page, that doesn't tell you half the stuff that's really taking place.
So the difference, or just the takeaway from this case, is actually the opposite. So he has the ability to post without it becoming a free speech forum. That's the takeaway from this case. So before this case, you ran the risk of, if you posted and you didn't like commenter number 2 and you chose to delete that comment, let's say it was some profanity, and you chose to delete that comment, you would then potentially be liable for a violation of that individual's free speech rights. This case clarified that he may be allowed to post, but he's not creating a public forum. Yeah, so this case doesn't say you can't share the posts of the city to get more information out about the meeting. This case says go ahead and do that, and you're not risking creating a public forum. But I started with the public records piece because that law didn't change, And so that's where the retention obligation still arises. So even though it's not a public forum, there's still legal issues that rise.
Do you have a Venn diagram or a spreadsheet?
No, right. I'm sure MRC does.
Because
and they
it
have-
does sound like, in one case, we're talking about that woman, and it is subject to public records.
Right,
But on
exactly.
the other hand, it is not abusing free speech.
It's not, yes, exactly. So the Linkey versus Freed case took away one of the huge risks that we ran, right? With, if you were posting anything, and the Ninth Circuit had essentially said, if there's a nexus with your role as an elected official, and but for your role as an elected official, you wouldn't be posting this, you've potentially created a public forum. You couldn't block anyone, you couldn't delete comments, even if it's your personal Facebook page. This case removed all of those limitations, but it didn't touch the Public Records Act, and then it didn't touch our last topic, which is use of public facilities. So this one is a bit more nebulous, but it's important, an important reminder when we're in an election year, and we're gonna talk about it more in the council's conversation, but I'll just go ahead and give the overall of it to facilitate your next conversation. So RCW 4217A.555 is the statute that specifically says public facilities shall not be used to assist campaigns for office or active items on a ballot, so propositions, election items. There are very limited exceptions to that, which include where an elected body chooses to speak on a topic that's on a ballot, and you hold a public hearing, and you then take a vote, and you act on a statement of support or a statement against whatever is pending. You can do that, but we just have to tick a process in order for you to do that. Facilities, it's important to note, if you haven't done that, and if you haven't gone through that exception, facilities does include websites. So your website, your potential social media account could be seen as a public facility depending on how your website is utilized. So Facebook, for example, has elected official accounts. They have a version of the platform that you can use as an elected official. All the council people in Tacoma, Seattle have them, King County, the county electeds. I don't know if Kitsap County does, but they utilize those, and those websites, those versions of Facebook are designed to show they are an elected official. Here's how to contact me. Arguably, the PDC's never said that that is a public facility, but arguably they could. And then using that for campaign purposes to advocate for or against a ballot measure or to advocate for a particular candidate could be prohibited conduct under this statute. So you want to be very careful about that. I think it's unlikely that your personal Facebook page is going to fit the definition of a public facility, but there's a risk depending on the level of engagement that you've connected the two. That's why most folks use a separate campaign page where they can isolate all campaign-related materials from any other social media. Yeah.
I'm probably not going to articulate this, but it sounds like if Mark was running for re-election and I was running against him, I'm not holding office, but he does hold office, it sounds like if he has a personal Facebook page and starts saying things about the city, I could say them under free speech because I don't hold office, but Mark might be, going down a rabbit hole on his Facebook page on that. So that, I'm not saying it's not equal or fair because it doesn't matter, we hold office, but we do need to be very careful about that then when we run for re-election, if we run for re-election, on that, making sure we're following the rules that we have to follow the other 3.5 years.
Right. I think there's a lot of things that would have to line up for that to be the case, for his personal Facebook page to be considered a public facility, but it is accurate to say.
Public record too.
And for public records.
That's,
Oh,
yeah, I wasn't
absolutely.
talking about, I'm sorry, I wasn't talking
No,
about facilities,
no,
I was
yeah.
talking about more of the public record, because
Yeah.
that could really cross over pretty quickly if we both said the same thing, but he's a councilman.
Yeah, when you're a sitting council member, these
Yeah.
rules apply. When you're a candidate, the rules do not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the only exception to that is the public use of public facilities is broader, and I'm just focusing on websites because we're talking about
Right.
social media.
Sorry.
So if you were to come to our meeting and try to stand at the podium and say, I'm running for election, we would have to stop you,
Right.
because you can't use our facility to speak about your election. And lots of agencies get busted for that one. Yeah.
Is, the page you're talking about, the political page for Facebook, is that an asset of the city? Like the city provides them those pages?
I don't think so. I think it's just a feature that you can utilize, but I think it, like, I don't think that this, well, let me actually take all that back. I do think that the city helps them set those up, or the agency, because then they retain and they monitor it, from a public record standpoint. So that, I think that's happening in some situations. I know of at least one agency that does that, but it's not necessarily across the board
I
that
mean, we're
that's
not gonna
happening.
monitor our own. There's no shop to monitor people who are running, you know?
Oh,
like
yeah,
Signing pages, yeah.
No, absolutely
So,
not.
yeah.
No.
So those are assets that belong to City of Tacoma, as an example, okay? The
For
city-
example, yeah,
The city will basically issue them a page.
that they're monitoring,
And monitoring,
correct.
yeah.
I mean, Facebook's issuing it, but the method that they have created the account, I think
The
is.
city would have a password and all that to monitor those things that are being done.
What I can say is, to the extent that's happening, then for sure we're in this PDC world.
For sure.
I don't know if it's happening. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a lot of work.
yeah, for sure. All right, so, any questions about any of these topics other than the ones we've just grappled with? No? Okay. All right, I'm happy to transition to the next topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I do have a question.
yeah,
In the reference you used, example you used, whoever it was versus Pew Out West versus Pew Out
Yeah.
or whatever, were there any comments being made on those pushes of the city's posts onto her or his personal website or personal Facebook page? Were there comments being allowed and taken and back and forth there, or were they just pushed and nothing was said? Just
yes,
curious.
yeah, there were, she had comments activated. And that reminds me of when I left off this presentation, I apologize, the Open Public Meetings Act. So we've talked about this as well. Another legal issue is if Councilmember Trineri posted on a personal page and said, come to tonight's meeting, this will be on the agenda, and then Councilmember Chang, Councilmember, everybody tagged on and said, yes, we have an OPMA violation, right? So if we have a quorum, even if it's not 5 minutes apart, there's still a potential quorum issue. So that's why a like counts.
Yeah.
Why not?
No more like
But
it.
none of those likes are public.
3 likes, you got.
Yeah.
They are
Likes
public,
and
that's
They should be
true.
seen public,
That's
so.
true, but we would have had to have noticed your conversation. Poor Brandy would have had to somehow create a social media notice, so, yeah. It's that the conversation occurred that creates the violation.
I was gonna ask you, I don't need names for sure, cities, people, but do you have any examples that you've come across?
Of this social media issue, right? I don't think it's been
Or your office
litigated
has come
yet.
across, like,
Thankfully, no.
Just pretty rare.
Yeah, I mean, the concept comes from polling, right? And one of the big cases, it wasn't social media, but City of Seattle got in trouble for this, where a staff member actually had a checklist and they were calling each council member and then marking where they were gonna vote. And then the checklist became part of a records request, and so it's the idea that you are using something's functioning to tally the way you are all feeling about legislation outside of a public meeting. That's the violation, yeah.
Yeah. What about having a reader board where the public can see it and then, and it shows everything that's happening in the city? That seems like a good way to go, to get information out there.
Yeah, I know a lot of cities that utilize those, yeah. They can be pretty expensive. They also are subject to your sign code, so if you give yourself a reader board, you can't deny businesses reader boards, and lots of my cities, in my experience, don't want a proliferation of reader boards, but there's ways around that, or there's ways to regulate it. So, yeah, reader boards can be great tools, yeah. They're mostly electronic these days, so I still have a couple
Right.
cities where someone's going out there with the letters, and that seems.
No, you want electronic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay.
Charlie, do you see this social media concerns and issues continuing to grow
Yeah.
and be
think the WhatsApp case indicates as social media changes and the platforms change, the problems change, and with WhatsApp, the retention issue becomes a problem where they're transitory in nature because of the platform. So we went through a cycle where a lot of us were all communicating on Teams. We're getting requests now for Teams messages. Were those messages transitory or were they not? You know, City of Seattle, for example, was keeping transcripts of all of their Teams meetings. Those records are now being requested, same with chats. So just as new tools come online, they present new challenges for social media, or for public records. It would be great if everyone just picked up the phone. That's the punchline. Don't create any records, just call each other. Not you guys, don't call each other. Call staff. Call staff.
That was funny. That was funny.
That's how it is, sorry.
Backtrack.
Yeah, sorry. All right, so switching gear to the,
Okay, we can jump to our next item. Actually, I've got a topic that wasn't on your agenda, so I've narrowed, of all those dates I've for the retreat, I've narrowed it down to 2 in April. But my question is, it's not budget time yet, so what's the content? Are we having a session like we had before, where you guys are talking about whatever you guys want to talk about, and so do I need to schedule a day? Because we're way too far out to be talking about budget and mid-year review stuff. So if we're having a retreat in April, what's the content?
Have you picked a date on that?
I've got it down to 2 dates, but I may pivot and just make it part of a work study. If we're gonna talk for an hour or hour and a half, we don't need to have a special meeting.
No, in mid-year, I think it almost like September or something.
It'll be, if we were gonna do a mid-year review type topic, and I don't know if we need to, maybe, so I'm just questioning, now that I've herded cats and found 2 dates, I'm questioning, do I need these 2 dates? Because what is your intent? Go ahead, Jay.
No, the reason I brought it up at the last meeting about scheduling a retreat was so we had a date, and now this is bringing up and what are the topics?
Yeah.
And our retreats have usually been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, have usually been business-based as opposed to our open session. And if our next business for retreat is the mid-year review,
Likely.
then kick it down the road. I was just putting
Okay.
it out there to say, is it time for one where we have business? If
Yeah,
we
I think
don't, then I'm good.
you brought it up, and then I think then Scott said sooner versus later. So I wrote it down and jumped on it and sent you guys an email. And then now that I've herded cats and found 2 dates, I'm going, but why are we meeting?
No,
And
that's
it's your
not-
meeting, and you tell me, do you want to wait until the summer? Do we take a summer break?
I think April is still quite a few months out, and I feel like there's quite a few topics still to talk about. We need to talk about what we're putting behind Zoom, and that was one topic. We still need to talk about fluoride. I feel like there's still a lot of different topics that we can be talking about.
Our first brainstorming meeting last year had one round around the room, and I think some of us are ready to go around again with different topics.
And if that's the intent, I think we can do that within a work
Okay,
study
it is not
versus
budget
having a
related,
special
though.
day.
I would
Not
say
budget
so.
related,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
more brainstorming.
Okay.
Than budget.
Okay, so why don't we carve out an hour in a work study, hopefully in the first quarter, so we'll look at, we're all just getting, back up and running, our committees largely haven't met, so let's scrap all those dates that,
Okay.
even though we settled on one, because I think we could do this, I think, on a work study evening. So I'll get back to you guys so that so you don't just show up and we're gonna have it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can write down topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll communicate as we have our next managers meeting isn't till the first week in February, we have a project meeting tomorrow. So after we look at agendas, and I think we could I would, it is safe to say, let me look up the calendar here.
Yeah.
So
Are you still
I
in
like
the
what we
work
did
study
last
and-
time.
Yeah, I thought about that and I thought, you know what, I bet that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Brandy, there wasn't anything on the February work study, was there? She's the keeper.
Oh, I thought we were gonna go back a little bit. Or we're-
Well, we could, I mean, if it's,
On this particular one, with all our little topics, or, you know,
so that would be February.
Move that.
I say let's do it in March.
Okay, well, I'm gone on vacation in March at the work study,
If
so.
we're only looking for an hour and a half, can we push it into the springtime, say April-ish?
I think,
That's
yeah,
what I was thinking.
I would say the April 15th, tentatively, the April 15th work study, and I'll just have Brandy put it into the agenda.
April's when they do like the downtown cleanup and all those kind of things. There could be some good conversation pieces of how to contribute to that.
Okay, so
Three
Yeah,
weeks.
February, we have 3 items.
there's five Tuesdays in April, and so the third Tuesday would be the 15th.
So April,
April 15th is the work study, correct?
April 15th, and we have slated strategic planning session, the mayor has.
Was it already in there?
Well, there you have it. Now it's.
You are good.
I just didn't know.
I forgot. See,
Okay.
And then this will give us lots of
Okay,
time
so,
to put
Yeah,
consent down.
so then put your thoughts together and disregard the previous email that I sent you guys. All right, now let's jump back in. We've stalled long enough. For Councilmember Diener, we've got the CalSMO endorsement policy. And I did a little bit of research. I remember from last time when we deliberated on this, us and Bremerton were the only two cities on the peninsula. Gig Harbor has a policy that, like we do now, but previously it was us and Bremerton that held public hearings and had a process, because you have to allow both sides of an issue to be heard, so we have to hold a public hearing. And then from there, the council could take action to take a position on a ballot measure. And so now, I don't know what the attorney's got left to say.
You took it all, yeah. That's useful information about Kitsap specific. I would say in King and Pierce, especially this last election cycle, there were a ton of legislative bodies taking positions on, especially state initiatives. So it is an activity that quite a few legislative bodies in our state engage in. And as the mayor said, you just have to go through a process before you do it, but it is entirely lawful if you choose to do it, hear from both sides. And then anything outside of that situation, if, let's say, for example, we've dealt with this before, if the fire district has a bond, we can invite them to come speak at our meeting, but they cannot say, vote yes for the bond. What they have to be doing is providing factual information about the bond. They can do that using our facilities, just as anyone in the audience could provide factual counterpoints. We can also provide factual statements on our website about a levy, if we're doing a levy, or certain legislative acts, but we can only do one statement. So the PDC restricts us to one public statement with regards to those sorts of things. So that's the legal framework. The reason I wanted to inject myself in this conversation is just it seemed like there were questions about whether it was even legal for you to speak. And I just wanted to assure you it is, and lots of public agencies do. But you also, as the mayor points out, could join a lot of agencies who've specifically chosen not to speak on elective pieces. That it's entirely a policy choice of the council.
And I don't recall, was it 2 years ago? It was at least
2023.
2023, so it was 2 years ago that the current policy was put in place. And part of it, at least my observation was, the folks that are for it, whether it's typically the school district and the fire district where we're taking a position, we will get the fire chief, or we'll get a person or two, and the room is packed with the no vote. And you will get tons of testimony on the no side, and typically then the council takes a position to support it. I haven't seen us not, in my tenure, support something. So anyway, that's the history, I'm just giving you the background of what other jurisdictions within the county, and Jay, you asked to bring this
I
forward.
did. I want to bring back, I'll go back to my original comments in 2023, and that the council had gone back, as far as I could research, and I didn't go back any farther, all the way back to 68, of taking a supportive or non-supportive position on bonds and levies that had come before the council. I strongly feel that it's, when something is to the benefit of the city,
Just in time.
Perfect
boy,
time.
you are just in time.
Get
yeah.
started.
We
So
waited this whole time for
you
you.
missed out on the social media training, but now we are discussing
No problem.
the endorsement policy.
Yeah, so social media training, don't. That is in short version.
Don't have to worry about that.
So we go back to 68 of historically, of the council taking a position or non-position. I have my own feelings about different activities, because the library would be one on that also. But I believe that if something is to the benefit of the city, that we should listen to both sides and then come out as a council supporting or choose not to support it. I think we're elected officials, we were elected for a reason, part of it is a leadership reason. We're not telling people, one of the comments that came up in 2023 was we're telling people how to vote. And we are not telling people how to vote, we can't tell people how to vote. We are saying this is to the benefit of the city or not for the benefit of the city. And that's pretty much where I stand on it and wanted to bring it back. I will say that council, when they made that choice, had previously, in their tenure, supported or non-supported previous ones. So it was kind of a shock to all of a sudden go from supporting to non-supporting. Or not taking any action at all, excuse me. That was a wrong term. Yep.
So, yeah, that would be my question. When they are not supporting, are they creating a statement of opposition or just not taking a stand at all?
Not taking a stand at all is what would be.
Depends on how you interpret it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna throw my 2 cents
Sure.
in. I agree with your viewpoint thus far, but I'd like to take it one step further, because whether it's a statement of opposition or a statement of support, I think that this governing body should be able to do that, and I think that would be a great benefit to our community. With that being said, we are one governing body with 7 parts. And so I would like that if I was going to move forward with changing that if we were to make a stance, either in support or opposition, that the only way we draft a resolution is by a unanimous vote.
And just to go along with that, I remember when, was it in 2023? I thought it was in 2024 for the firefighters. It was
It was the-
2023.
I believe it was a school levy in 2023.
23 school levy.
It's 23 school
Well,
levy.
there are also the fire,
Not
was
before
the
this one.
firefighters too.
It
Yeah,
it
because
was the
in the past, it
firefighters.
was,
They just
wasn't
did
the
this.
school
They did it,
levy.
but they did not become, you guys did not take
No,
a position.
exactly.
Yes.
And so I think we get information out there. You can have anybody, the levy, the school board, the firefighters, the police. Or other people come to say, hey, we want to support this, or, hey, we're having a spaghetti feed, you want to come and support this. But for me, and I did, when I ran, I said, yes, I'm for the school district. But I don't feel like that is for us to take, because it is a stand of how we're going for this, so you vote for this way. And then I remember saying, okay, so if we don't, then are we gonna put a negative statement why we don't wanna support something? And then are we gonna get too many people coming in here? I think it's fine to get that information out. You can say that even on the government page, hey, the levy's coming up. And that's what I think about getting information out there. The levy's coming up. If also, what if we don't want to? So that means we pick and choose what we want, what we think is important or not important.
Go ahead. So, you said, Jay, that as an example, a bond, fire, or school, if it's good for the city,
Benefits the city.
benefits the
Yeah.
city. Have you, I mean, you and I fall in the same line with all this stuff. I'm just curious, have you, had an example of a bond, fire, or school that you would sit up there and say is not for the?
Absolutely.
Not
I
for the
can give you
good
an
of the city.
example right now.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect example for me is anything that does not have a sunset clause. Because a continuing tax without a sunset clause says, I want to see that you've done with the money that we've given you. So anything without a sunset clause, I mean, we're required here, you know, to have zero, zero budget. So I'll pick on the school district right now, that's the one, I feel very strongly about. They have a levy that's coming up. It has.
Can I ask a question? Do they have a February levy?
Yes.
Okay, so
I know, it's a big.
we wanna be really careful that we're not
Yeah.
violating the
Yep.
law. Okay,
So,
Ballots are dropping, I
you
think.
said I feel really strongly and I just wanna catch you.
and
before
you can say,
we're using
shut up,
the
Jay,
public
anytime.
facility.
Feel free. But the point of it is that has a limit on it. Okay? And anything, so when you're asking for example, is there something I would not champion or I would not support? Yes, anything that doesn't have a sunset clause for me.
Oh,
All right. Then I really have an issue with it.
yeah.
If I could continue for a second?
I think
Yeah,
I'd like
go
to hear
ahead.
from others.
Yep, fine.
Fred?
I'm formulating some questions I would want to have Mark was thinking.
Well, so was I.
That's Johnny come lately there. Nice, Scott.
I was just going around the room. You guys can hot potato all you want.
You're on the spot
Wow.
right here.
Well, John kind of stole my thunder. I really, I don't really see the importance from our community and our citizens in whether the council as a unit, as a team, supports something or doesn't. Well, to provide a supporting statement. I think if we provided a non-supporting statement, I think that would have probably a little bit more power. I would hope we would not do that. But at the same time, I agree with John that individually, we still have the way it is right now, we still have the ability to speak about our personal feelings. And I would hate to put ourselves in a situation where maybe we don't all agree about a particular school levy or a fire levy or a bond or something along those lines. But we can't say anything. We can't express our feelings individually because we voted into something as council, as a team of council members, that we're going to agree, and it's taken a majority vote that we're going to agree with something. So I prefer the way it's handled right now. That gives me and the other 6 of us here the ability to go out and say, I'm holding signs for the school levy, we're rocking and rolling. The citizens see who we are out there prone for these things over having a body making a statement for the body.
That's exactly what Mel was saying.
And like I said, I'm okay with the body, as long as it's, I wanna give, that one person, if Eric's out, then I think that means we're not as one body in agreement, and we should. If we do find something that we can get all 7 of us, I'm okay with moving forward with that, but that would be my one.
So it'd
Our
be,
constituents didn't vote us for this though, our constituents didn't
They
vote
certainly
for
come
us to
out.
say, hey, are you gonna, vote for the bond, or are you gonna do this? No, when we ran, now in my statement, in the paper, I said, yes, I'm for the school.
Oh, hold on.
Yep.
Well, okay, well,
Being
no,
for
I
the
mean-
school is different,
Yeah.
that's a fine
so,
statement.
so has
just remember that we have a bond
Can we,
kind of thing.
can we
Yeah.
pause there, because I want to hear from the two that haven't spoken.
I'm curious to
And,
hear
and
Scott's.
to John and
Yeah.
Mark's point, it would be very easily next Tuesday to repeal what we have on the books. To craft new policy will take a little longer than that, and I'm gonna defer to the attorney.
Yeah, and I'm-
Quickly, and what,
Right.
could we put those provisions of so she's gonna do her research for the rest of you guys talk.
Yeah, I've been trying to do the research, because councils act by a majority, and so whether the council could adopt legislation that requires unanimity is a legal question. I don't see, anyone ever doing it, so that usually gives me a red flag, but I'll continue to look at it.
Okay. Scott, Fred, before we go back to people, I wanna hear.
Did you want to go, or do you want to ask me what I'm thinking?
I did think of some things. One is that, okay, I question the value of an endorsement from a body versus an individual. I know that if I see a voter's guide and it says endorsed by the city of Bremerton, I would say, well, it would be unprintable, but I'd say, who is the city of Bremerton to take a position on something that affects my finances, my property tax? So I would actually argue that the value of an endorsement depends more on the individual being asked than an anonymous, nameless body. Also, I think there's a sanctity of voting where it is a personal thing. You may or may not want to share your votes and how you vote. So I know we went through a very polarizing election. There's a lot of people here who probably don't want to discuss their votes, and I think that's the way it should be. One thing that bothered me when we did have this resolution in the council is that council members were forced, in a sense, to take a position, yes or no. We were not allowed to abstain. On principle, I would prefer just to abstain because I don't want to tell voters how to vote. And with respect, I actually disagree with Jay, who said that it's not telling people how to vote. I think it is telling people how to vote. When your council says it's benefiting the city because we get more benefits from it, and therefore we are voting yes, I think that's very clearly telling people what the council thinks in terms of voting. So I can see though that there are certain cases that John would say we're.
You said something very distinct though right there. I just want to call that out. You said you are telling people how you think versus telling them how to vote. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, so I like John's suggestion that if there are obvious and unanimous positions that we want to take on certain issues, then yes, we should be able to support it. I don't know how we would get there though, because it's almost like we would have to take a straw poll ahead of time, like, is it unanimous? Do we want to proceed or not?
I don't think you couldn't take that.
I don't know how it's possible, but I like that idea. But so that's.
You're gonna have to go through the hearing,
The
and then take a
deliberations.
vote, and then is it unanimous? If you're able to do that. So,
Yeah.
Scott?
So sorry I'm late, I had another work obligation, and maybe I missed first part of this discussion.
No.
Not this one.
Okay, so I'm actually in support of the idea and concept, although I think good points have been made. You know, Fred, to your last comment about, we are impacting people's livelihoods. We do that in a number of ways already. I don't think we're telling people how to vote. I think people, and to your point about, people don't look for us for that advice. I think some do. I think some don't. They're like, I'm going to vote the way I feel, but others may be on the fence about it or want to hear the council's position on it and how it is good for the city. And I like the idea of somehow making sure we've got enough votes to swing it. But I don't think people should abstain from voting on that, because I don't think
Code
that
doesn't
means,
allow for it.
yeah. So it'll be a tough vote for some people, but I think it's a good thing to do.
It's good to get the information out, that's our job, get all the information out.
Do we have a history of how many times ballpark
It-
voted no?
I don't recall ever voting no.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like if we throw it up there,
In the 18 years I've been
We're gonna
around,
vote
I don't
yes.
recall ever voting no. let's go to Jay. Jay's been.
No, I'm writing notes. First of all,
So, round two here, so
Okay,
who
so
wants, Mark
in-
raised his hand, you wanna go?
I'll let Mark go first, and then I'll jump in.
I was just gonna add to, the conversation. Picture us at the dais at a public meeting, and as the mayor alluded to, he took some words out of my notes here. We've got 2 or 3 folks for the school levy, and we've got, or whoever maybe, whatever, maybe on the ballot at that point, and then we've got 2 or 3, or usually there's more naysayers than there are those 4. So we've got many more opposed, and they're speaking at the dais, and then we have to make a decision to support that measure after the public hearing is closed.
Remember, a public hearing, unlike our citizen comment, people can speak for as long as they want.
But we've got a decision to make right shortly after that public hearing is closed. You've got, your spectators are not equal.
So,
It's just not what I consider.
so are we afraid to lead? I mean, that's my question to this group, is are we afraid to lead? We got voted into office. I'm sorry, John, but, saying that one person could stop it, what's the point of majority? You as a council asked me to support our decisions when I've been on, I don't mean not the losing end, but the short end of a vote, and I've supported that. I will concur with whatever we decide tonight, but I will challenge each of you to say, this is not a benefit to the city where we're getting money. This is a benefit to the city of people that come in for a school, in this case, possibly a school system, a fire department, or a library. That's what we were elected for. It's fine to have a disagreement and disagree, and yes, you're absolutely right, Warren, that in a public forum, we have more people on one side come up than against the other. Well, that's sometimes we just gotta take it, and we do, and we've taken it before, and that's the nature of the beast. Otherwise, don't sit here. I'm very passionate about this because I agree with you, Heidi, that individually we can go out and say that, but it does carry more weight if it says, is it from a council on that? And if we're afraid to take a stand, I'm okay with that, but then why are we bothered voting on anything?
That's so unfair, Jay.
No, it's
So
not,
unfair.
it's not.
Why are you
it's
here
not-
at the table?
Okay, let Jay say his piece, and then,
And so I challenge you to say, hey, we should help shape and lead this community, not sit on the sidelines. And that's my 2 cents, and that's where I'm at.
So, he brings up some good points, right? One, I will say that. I think the vehicle to get there needs to exist. Let's throw out some plausible, while very unlikely scenarios that could happen. The Kitsap Public Facilities District wants to build more projects than they already have today, and they're funding the Community Event Center. They have the ability to add a tax on the county to be able to do so through a vote of the people. It would be on the ballot. In the right terms, it could pass, it may not. We may have some thoughts on how that may affect us. I would say the same thing. We haven't used the Port of Bremerton. Also has its own taxing authority, and they have land right here within our city limits and could have things that would impact us. That's why I like the ability to have a vehicle to be able to do that. Again, I'm still gonna kind of sit on my laurels with the, I like to have a unanimous, or even if it's not unanimous, I would hope that it would be legal to have a supermajority rather than just a majority. But I'm gonna let the city attorney figure that out for us. That would help us get there, because I do know that there are going to be and always, shouldn't say always, regularly are contentious topics that may not get 100% of this body's alignment.
Can I ask why it's important to get even a supermajority? I mean,
I think it helps, right? Especially for 3 and a 7-person council. That's pretty split, right? And then now
Yeah.
we're and you can't not look at that any. You know, for me, I can twist that at 50-50, right?
Right.
Which technically is not, but again, that's why. And I'm really thinking about, you know, if I were ever in that minority opinion, how would that feel? How would that look? What would that mean? Because now maybe it's my election year, and now I'm being cast into this without being able to fully articulate what I want out there representing me. And that's really why I come at it from either a unanimous or supermajority thought process. I'm just trying to think if I'm ever on that minority side.
I definitely think differently when I think of levies and I think of bonds. You know, I mean, my mindset's completely different. Levies for me is not automatic, but yes, you know, bonds, I really think about it, and there's a lot of people that show up for those, and if they, I guess if we give them the open forum, and it could be a long night, but I'm here to listen to it, you know, I mean, that's what I'm here for, and everyone, it's not a secret, you know, what I do all the time out there, and who I support and whatnot, I'm probably letting everybody know, you know, but, I'm kind of on the side of Jay, you know, so we can go forward, and I'm not sure how many more roundtables we need to do on a topic, but, can I ask, when you guys removed it? A year ago? A year and a half ago?
2023.
2023?
2 years.
Year and a half, actually.
Yeah, can I ask, probably watch the video, but can I ask, what were some of the outliers that removed it, that was it just
It
people?
passed 5-2, I must say.
That was fun too.
That's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy.
My memory's accurate.
Yeah.
It wasn't a unanimous decision, I know that.
That was
We know why,
I think
though.
Fred and Jay both voted
But
not to
I
pass.
believe it was a process. A lot comes out of the process that takes place with the public meetings. And the council at that point looked at it as a way of taking that entire process and those testimonies out of our hands.
Yeah,
It's your business meeting.
yeah.
That's
I
whether-
mean, I'm different than you guys. I mean, I got a really big mouth, you know, I mean, it's not a secret, you know, I mean, I know, and I use it. But I definitely, I respect everybody's vote in this community, I respect everybody's vote in here too, so however everyone wants to vote and do it, I'm for it, so.
So if the desire is to, go ahead, Fred.
I think what I'm wrestling with is what is our role as a council per se. There are things that we definitely need to vote on, such as utility rates. We need to vote on tax authority if we are going to increase our property tax by the minimal amount to make 1%. So these are things we have to vote on.
We're not
And I think we agree on that.
we're not a deciding factor. Like the school district, like, we're not deciding the fate of a levy or a bond.
But some things, like I remember being doorbelling and being asked by a woman, what was my stance
The
on
whole time.
stem cell research?
Oh,
And I had to say, well, this is not something that comes under the council's jurisdiction in any way.
sure.
But then I asked why it was important to her.
Sure.
But that was, so, to me, voting on resolutions or bonds or levies is an extracurricular thing in the sense of it's not what we were originally tasked with doing on the council. And so I see our task as being more, I mean, I can see there may be a beauty in expanding our role, but I don't think it is our role to,
Policy and budget, right? Policy and budget. Those two.
in the city limits, yeah, so.
Because there's only one school in our city limits.
Well, one high school.
Well, yeah, one high school. And, no, I'm not, I think as individuals, yes, we can, support, like, go out, and coffee with the council. If someone asks you about the levy, I'm gonna tell people exactly how I vote. And then, but I don't feel like it's not our role. I think it's to get as much information to bring people here to talk about it, so then it's on record and other people can listen about, whatever situation, and then put it up there on the government page. Hey, don't forget to, vote, there's, for the levy, but I just don't feel like, yeah, that is ours to tell people how to vote.
Do you as the mayor, do you put out a statement that you're for or you're against?
I don't, because I would be speaking, as the mayor, I'm the representative of the city, and it would be inappropriate for me to take a position as the mayor. I could, somebody asked me personally, and this is how I feel, but if I make a statement, then I'm representing the city, and if you guys have made a policy decision, then that would be, if you guys disagree with me, then I believe that would be inappropriate. When I was a council member, we had a mayor that took a position on a racetrack that was proposed out in the industrial park and went down to Olympia and testified and didn't talk to our city council. We took exception to that, and I think rightly so. If the mayor's gonna be out lobbying or speaking on behalf of something, I believe that the council, at least I do, I feel you guys need to make a decision that this is the city's position, and then I'm speaking as the mouthpiece for the city. Does that answer your question?
It does. When you were on council back in the day, were you comfortable with making a stance on just trying to get like some history?
We did it, okay? I'm a strong supporter of those organizations, and even if we hadn't, I was out, as the mayor, as a council member, those videos and things that, what's his name? Doug Miller does. I was doing those, okay? I'm personally supportive of these things, but I've got to be careful making statements as the mayor, because now I'm representing the city's position. And so we're kind of split here, and it's whether, I think, is a deal breaker for you if it's not a unanimous or a super majority? Because if it's not, then I think because we can easily repeal what's been put in place by the city council. It's just whether it's putting code together and whether or not we can.
Right. And the hesitancy I have is simply the council acts by majority. And so by doing this, you are giving the minority a veto power over the majority. And so I don't know if you can do that. I'm just trying to confirm. There are only certain situations where your state-directed powers require a supermajority, and I'm not finding any agencies that then affirmatively require it where state law doesn't require it.
Okay, so I'm kind of,
So-
go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say, there are some, I was just looking at some random articles, and Olympia City Council voted against some Washington ballot measures that they said were just not factual. And so there was maybe opportunity for us to look at some of that. We've got a lot of mandates that should be flowing our way with housing and soon climate change.
And you other than the ballot measures, our vehicle with these mandates is our lobbyist.
Right, but if we see, and sometimes, I know that we want to be in the driver's seat for a lot of like the ADU stuff that we went through. But I think having the ability to talk about these and then set a position, a council position on these would help maybe just beyond the local initiatives that we see. Good.
So, I think John's the swing vote here. I'm just looking for, if I'm gonna put this on the agenda,
I think I'm for it even if it doesn't require a supermajority.
I'm not planting my flag on this either, I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate. I understand and I agree with what Jay's saying. It is our responsibility to take a
I have
stance
some more
for
thoughts
what's
on
good
some of
for the city.
the other things.
So our position, so we can either leave it alone or repeal what's out there. We repeal it, then we're gonna look direction for more of you to give direction, kind of like I did with this, to say, hey, we wanna have a public hearing on this measure. And then we're gonna conduct, have that public hearing and potentially the council takes action for or against a measure.
Don't we have to do it pretty quick because,
Tonight,
Be next
well,
week.
I mean, the public hearing,
next week.
how long, that's it? Just to get that out there for public hearing, to get 1 week?
That's different than, so what I'm saying is, first step one is, and I think we could do it by next week, is to repeal the ordinance or resolution or ordinance?
Ordinance.
There's an ordinance on our books that says the city council can't take a position, okay? That would be step one next Tuesday, potentially, to get that on the agenda, to remove it. From there, if the council wanted to take testimony, we have a public process that we have to follow to put something and put it in the newspaper and notify the public that we are having a public hearing and conducting a process. That's separate than for next Tuesday.
Right, but are we gonna give the public enough time before we vote on this thing?
I think what
feel
you're
like-
hearing him say is that won't be on next week's agenda.
Correct. It would not, because there's no way to,
Notice a public hearing.
Yeah, I'm
we
just
could,
saying,
but we're right
That's-
there.
that's not
No,
giving them
the clerk's
enough
saying no.
time.
Because it has to get in the newspaper.
Yeah.
There's a process we have to do.
Usually it's
Yeah.
10 days.
10 days minimum, she's saying, to properly notice. So first meeting we could see this, if you repeal, would be the first meeting in February.
So there's really no need to make this decision tonight then, because, I mean, I'm down for whatever, but, we're not gonna take a stance on the levy coming up. It won't be in time,
Yeah.
Because it's the first Tuesday in
February.
February, yeah.
Actually, it's a little later than that, but it's not,
Is
it
it?
won't be, it would not be.
I still wanna have the conversation
I
move
still-
forward.
It's not
I would still like to have a
I'm for a
conversation,
vehicle to do so.
yeah, to do it, but I would like to,
But you can't talk about it up at the dais unless you have the public hearing.
no, I understand, what I was gonna say was, and, sorry, I didn't cut you
Yeah,
off.
it's okay.
What I think John and I are in the same boat on this one. Let's continue this discussion after the levy. It would not be germane to before.
I don't think there's any more discussion to have. You
Yeah,
want to repeal it or?
yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that
Yeah.
repeal, do it after the levy.
It's pretty simple to remove it.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one thing, because I think there was confusion. So if you don't repeal it and you choose not to have a hearing, if someone comes to the podium and says, please vote for the school board, I will have to stop them. So I will cut them off and say, you can't speak about that. So this is the only way you're able to have conversation about legislation. That's what the law is. So we let the fire district come, we let certain folks come and present the facts about what their legislation is, and then the counterfacts. But if someone, I do this quite frequently, if someone comes up and says, I'm running for, I stop them, I interrupt, the mayor interrupts, or, whoever.
Oh, that's if they're running for something.
No, or if it's in favor of a ballot initiative.
Oh, uh-huh.
So last election cycle, we had 4 initiatives, one dealing with natural gas. If someone got up and said, vote no for natural gas, I would have had to stop them mid-sentence and said, pursuant to RCW 4255, I have to stop you. We can't use our public facility for that purpose. Otherwise, everybody in the room, so even the staff members, are potentially subject to PDC penalties.
Oh, I thought the firefighter could come and,
Not
Do it.
with our current
They can
code.
say, we have a levy,
uh-huh.
but they can't say vote for that levy.
Oh, of course not, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, the facts of presenting something.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, there's a levy coming out in February, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Just wanna get that information out, like on the government page, right?
Totally.
Levy
Perfect.
coming out.
I just wanted to make sure that was
Right.
clear for you, yeah.
Yeah.
So in a public hearing setting, then they could then say, here's why I would like you to vote for this.
Yes,
Here
for
are the
public
facts.
hearing, and then I'm saying we don't have enough time for that. That's what I would
And I'm saying it's forever.
You're
It's
correct.
not just this.
We do not have enough time for
Yeah.
that. And that's why I just concurred.
Yeah.
With the clerk's office, we cannot get the notice out in time
Exactly.
to be able to.
I just wanna
conduct
make sure
that.
that was clear.
Yes.
So I'm hearing the, what's that?
We can still act on whether we're.
Correct, and that's, I'm just concurring, so there is concurrence that you'd like us to prepare an ordinance,
Yeah.
something to repeal that ordinance that's on the books.
But it's not gonna be for next week's meeting.
It doesn't have to be,
Okay, good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
because
I prefer to
the
be-
window's missed. So,
You're gone, right?
I'm gone.
Oh, okay.
yeah, so
So for
we'll
the
get it
first-
on the agenda in February.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
We beat that to death.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Fisk is over here. Anyway, he's gonna come give us a presentation on the criticals area code update. So
And if I might interject for a second, and before you get started, I do want to say that this was briefed before land use committee, and so we're all in concurrence with what Jim's gonna be speaking on.
Well, good evening, council.
Good evening.
everybody know Jim? He's our
Jim Fisk.
senior planner.
He speaks real quietly, he speaks quiet,
He's soft spoken.
very soft.
All right, I have some prepared statements for you.
Gonna share your
As Peggy
screen there?
noted, we did discuss this at Land Use Committee last week, so I appreciate the opportunity to do this and talk about the updates to Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.162. That's the city's critical areas ordinance. As part of the implementation of the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. These amendments are intended to ensure compliance with the Growth Management Act and to integrate best available science for the protection of critical areas throughout the city. Tonight, I'll provide an overview of the proposed updates, the process undertaken so far, the improvements we aim to achieve through the update, and upcoming steps in the process. So to provide some context, under GMA, all cities and counties are required to adopt and periodically update development regulations to protect critical areas. These areas, as defined in the RCW, include wetlands, critical aquifer recharge areas, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, frequently flooded areas, and geologically hazardous areas. The city CAO was initially introduced to the Planning Commission in December and it discussed again earlier this month in January. Staff, as we already discussed, introduced this to the Land Use Committee last week. Since that time, no significant changes have been made to the proposed code language. The materials provided to you tonight include a red line and a clean version of the CAO. These are identical to those shared with the Planning Commission, the Land Use Committee, and the public. This ensures consistency in review and provides the City Council with the same information the Planning Commission is currently considering. The proposed updates to PLMC 20.162 are designed to align with state and federal requirements, incorporate best available science, and enhance usability and clarity within the code. The updates include some code reorganization to streamline the code and improve usability for staff, developers, and the public. Wetland buffers are being updated to align with Ecology's recommendations to ensure adequate protection of wetland functions and values. Wetland mitigation hierarchy. There's new provisions to incorporate flexible mitigation approaches, which include on-site mitigation options for projects and mitigation banking. There's some terminology changes specifically to stream buffers. The term stream buffer has been replaced with riparian management zone for consistency with state standards. These RMZs, the standards for RMZs have been enhanced to satisfy requirements from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, providing better habitat protection and water quality benefits. So we had two options for the RMZ measurement. The first relied on a maximum tree height of an old growth forest, and the second would increase our current buffers. The tree height measurement is problematic as it's site specific and it wouldn't provide certainty citywide. The second option, which is included in the draft, it allows for the application of consistent buffers based on stream types throughout the city. So staff created and is maintaining a web page dedicated to the CAO. Webpage includes links to the same redline version of 20.162 that's in your packet. Additionally, the webpage provides direction for the public to become involved in the process. And as we proceed through this update, we're developing a comment matrix similar to what we did with the comprehensive plan amendment, or the update, pardon me. The matrix will capture any comments received from the public, stakeholders, and other parties. It will provide staff's disposition for each comment and clearly identify whether comments are incorporated or not, along with justifications based on state requirements and best available science. So in the past few weeks, we've received comments from the Planning Commission and the public. We are currently reviewing these comments and will incorporate feedback where it's appropriate. Updates to the comment matrix will be shared with the Planning Commission and the public to ensure transparency. So tonight, I'd like to introduce Chad Wallen of Grady Associates. Chad is, well, he's actually kind of an extension of city staff. He was on the comprehensive plan update team and provides third-party review for development applications that come through the permit center. So Chad's been instrumental in providing technical expertise and updating the CAO. His role is focused on ensuring the proposed amendments align with best available science and meet the state and federal guidelines. So Chad is here tonight. He's available to discuss in greater detail any technical aspects of the proposed amendments. But it's all there in your packet. There's a lot. And looking ahead, the following steps are planned for the update. February Planning Commission meeting, there will be additional discussion on the proposed amendments and an opportunity to gather more feedback and refine the ordinance as necessary. In March, the Planning Commission will likely hold a public hearing to receive formal input from the community. And during this meeting, the Planning Commission is expected to make a recommendation on the CAO. After which, later this spring, likely prior to June, the CAO update along with the Planning Commission's recommendation will be presented to the council for consideration. And the critical areas ordinance, we do not anticipate there being an effective date prior to January 1st, 2026. We think the effective date will be at the beginning of next year. So Chad and I are here to answer any questions you might have, and we encourage you to share your thoughts and ask for clarification on any aspects of it. I appreciate your
So I'm probably wondering, so why is this on the agenda? Because the Planning Commission hasn't even finished its body of work. So last week when we were looking at setting agendas, and we didn't have much on the agenda. So we just thought this was an opportunity for you guys to get first taste of this, to look at it, because it's a lot of information. But recognizing that the Planning Commission has a couple of more meetings to do their body of work, hold a public hearing, and then make a recommendation to you guys for the proposed code. So it is a bit premature to get it to you guys, but it's a heavy lift, and we just wanted you an opportunity to touch it more than once. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, and also Scott, weigh in on this one. I mean, this is really the starting, I mean, we finished a comprehensive plan. We, voted, concurred with it. This is really like, okay, now the whole cycle starts back again, and this is part of the
Different
cycle.
elements of it, yes.
Different elements of it, but part of the cycle, so we'll continue. It's not like a static document, comprehensive plan. It continues to get updated. Am I saying that correctly? I mean,
Yeah,
what's the,
so the comprehensive plan, it really outlines a guide for the city's future and the way it develops, right? But how do we get there? And so our codes are how we implement those goals and policies that you all adopted through the comp plan update. And so this is the first time you're seeing the CAO, although we've actually been working on it for about a year in the background of all that comp plan work. And so this really implements those goals and policies that are found in the comp plan in various elements. And it's not the first code amendment that you'll see that's related to that comp plan adoption.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna add the state requires a periodic update to the critical area ordinance, shoreline code, and stormwater. So these things don't remain static for more than 8 years. But it's one of the more complicated sets of code in the city. I know a jurisdiction that recently adopted their CAO, and it's been appealed by 2 different parties. And so you might want to pay attention to the Growth Management Hearings Board decision on that. The Port Gamble Slalom Tribe essentially argued that we were violating the intent of ecology's mandates and best available science by not using sites or tree height site potential measurements. And they're arguing we should. And I think their look there is really more towards maybe rural Kitsap. But nonetheless, that might be an argument that if we, the county, don't prevail on, might have implications for the city as well. Those are food for thought.
Mr. Fisk, how many comments have we received?
There were
How many?
With the setting aside from the public. I know our planning commissioners have provided a number of comments.
Are you asking for specific comments or
Just
comments?
numbers.
Yeah, like
No,
how many
I
people-
think we have 2 sets of comments from 2 different organizations.
Okay,
That's absent the planning commission, so.
okay, but nothing from the general public, I guess.
Who were the organizations? KVA?
I can't recall, I think the Waterman Group was one,
Okay.
and I can't recall the other off the top of my head.
Can you talk a little more about the graphics on pages 160 and 161? And I'm just trying to understand what's changing in terms of the buffer. Is it like widening? Is it, obviously it's
For the s-
probably widening.
For the streams, and I'm sorry, I don't have the packet in front of me, if you gave me a code section.
Well, you were talking about like, I'm just wondering if you could walk us through some of these bullet points with the graphic, like.
Okay, so when I was talking about those 2 options, right? The riparian management zone.
There's, I don't know if that would help, but maybe you could explain what's being shown in these graphics.
I think it would.
Yeah, it was 160 and 161. 161 needs to be,
missed it, yeah.
yeah, that one. And then the next one, if you could make it landscape. Maybe start with the next one on 161. Because that seemed to, okay, that seems to show buffers. So I'm just curious, like, what is changing? Or what is, yeah.
Here, you want this one?
What is your question?
What's changing? What are we doing differently in the CAOs? Are these
So
buffers widening?
Increasing the buffer.
Yeah.
How much wider are they looking, can you help me understand how much wider? they
Well,
are?
so the the tree height, which Scott mentioned, that's hugely problematic because there's no consistent size of the buffer from a stream, right? So we have to analyze what is the potential growth of a tree at full maturity in an old growth forest, which, I mean, think about how high that could be, and then that dictates how wide that buffer would be. So it's really problematic in an urban setting, especially when you have streams and ravines with development at the top of those. So we've applied a standard buffer for the non-fish bearing and the seasonal stream of 100 feet, and for the fish bearing 150 feet.
And then there's a construction setback? building
Yeah,
setback
and so
as
there's
well?
an impervious surface setback from any buffer of 15 feet. So you couldn't put a parking lot within 15 feet of a buffer.
And in the city, like, is this basically affecting the greenbelt areas or?
No,
what's
it
the-
affects properties that are zoned residential, commercial, all sorts of things. There's a
Does it
potential.
depend on the topology or like how many trees are already there or how close they are to water or?
Well, it has to do with a wetland or being a stream.
If they're close
that
to it,
provides
yeah.
habitat, right? And so that tree growth, now I think it was it Fish and Wildlife that has the atlas? And it's a GIS database, but it's very general in the size, and so we would have to make site-specific determinations of what that buffer is before anything could happen. And so that could vary, depending on where you're at, and potentially greatly impact people's ability to develop their property.
So if people were against the greenbelt area, they would have to recalibrate, like how much of it would be developable, potentially?
Well, the green belt is a zone, right? So it allows certain uses, and most green belt in the city is along Blackjack Creek,
Right.
which is the shoreline of the state. So it kind of goes to the top of the slope. And so to say green belt is, and maybe it's semantics, but
I'm just thinking about in terms of the map, you know, here's the greenbelt area, this is most affected by the CAO.
But that isn't what is regulating it. It's not that it's a green belt.
It's site-specific.
It's streams, it's bodies of water, it's slopes.
Okay,
slopes,
but if you're not
wetlands.
close to a stream or something, then you wouldn't be affected.
So I can sort of elaborate, you know, a little bit on this. So
Could you come up to the table? It would be wonderful if you could, so that way the microphone picks you up.
we look at
Fine,
Yeah,
grab a
got a
chair.
chair, got a chair. Grab a chair.
Otherwise, the
Just
camera
wait.
might pick you up.
So, thank you. One example is in part of that BAS process, we were contacted by Fish and Wildlife and had some meetings with them because they wanted to present it's a database that they have. And I'll use City of Port Orchard as an example because I can recall a few of those widths. But like Jim mentioned, that database is assigning the width of a riparian management zone, which is measured from the edge of water, you know, out to whatever that distance is, and that's sort of like a no development zone for the most part. In their BAS, they sort of had two options for recommendations on how to apply their new science. One was using the tree height GIS program, which calculates it's species specific and based on what that old growth tree canopy would provide shading. For example, so when you look at that that program, you're gonna have all these different polygons all over, different color coded, because based on, they incorporate like NRCS soil data, and it's like, okay, historically old growth Doug fir was in this location, and then maybe old growth cottonwood is in this location. They're gonna have different tree heights, so code can't apply a standard buffer width for like a fish habitat stream. You'd have to go in to be site specific and say, okay, this piece of properties in this zone, it would have, you know, a tree height canopy of 260 feet. Code right now for those, I mean, it would potentially triple what buffers are right now. Fish and Wildlife understands that that might not be feasible for some local governments, so they had a second option. They said, well, if you can't use this database, they have a recommended minimum buffer width that they believe would protect water quality for that feature. So, you know, prevents turbid water erosion and stuff like that. That was 100 feet for seasonal perennial non-fish bearing streams. That's what we've recommended to adopt, because then that's a set standard that can be utilized across the city rather than, again, being site specific.
Or potentially subjective.
Correct, yeah, because you could have a type F stream in one location in the city and a different type F stream on the other location, and based on that database, you would be applying two different buffer widths rather than standardizing it. So you could see how the public would not be in favor of that, just because, one, no one's in favor of regulations, but or rules what they can and can't do, but then they're also not being treated sort of equally across the city. So we've taken that into consideration, and we're still adhering to VAS based on what is in Fish and Wildlife's guidance. We're just using one of the two options.
So a 100-foot buffer is as wide as some lots, so some entire lots may not be buildable.
And
Well-
there's current language in code as far as reasonable use, and there's processes, yep.
Now, with these updated codes, maybe this doesn't even pertain, but would this pertain to the pathway and the dilapidated buildings over the water? And to get
No,
our
that's
permit and
that's
stuff?
shoreline.
Okay, that has nothing to do with all this.
And for this code, did you make any changes to the geohazard code, or did that remain
Not
steady?
hugely significant.
Okay, and same with stream?
Well, with the exception of buffers, right?
Yeah, we also added some other, language for, stream regulations as far as, I can give one example, the daylighting of
Yeah,
streams, the pipe streams, we added some language in there, to try to incentivize a property owner to pull a culvert and restore habitat, and they would get a break in that standard buffer, because once they open up the pipe stream, then they're also putting a buffer on it, whereas a pipe stream right now might not be subject to a buffer.
Well, and speaking from past experience with Fish and Wildlife, I'm gonna give you a very specific example, although I'm not gonna tell you where it is, but there was a piped stream, and Fish and Wildlife said, hey, you need to apply a buffer to this stream, even though it's underground, it's piped, et cetera, and so we had to apply a buffer to that, in the hopes that someday somebody may daylight it and there would be sufficient room for the stream and the habitat that it would create, but once it's in the pipe, there's no incentive to take it out. They just simply had to move their development a little bit to the side, so what this code is proposing is to provide an incentive to get those streams that are in pipes daylighted, and there would be a fairly significant reduction in the required buffer width for those streams, but that's the way we see as reestablishing those streams.
Just the cost for homeowners to do that, right? Like, I had a situation where I had, I mean, examples all day long, but I had a homeowner who had two 12-inch pipes, about say 5 feet up their driveway, and they wanted to tear those out. So they called Fish, and they say, they're going to put a bridge in there. I mean, it's just
It
not
doesn't
even-
pencil out.
Not even practical, they just didn't even build there, I mean, it's expensive, I get it. Now, would the homeowner have to get like a survey to show the 100 feet? Would they have to get a professional, someone who knows how to know where to, like in the stream bed? What's that,
Yes, so-
what's the mid-high level mark or something like that?
Yeah, I think the code says ordinary high water mark of the stream.
Yeah,
So it's
would
really,
they have to get that surveyed in order to?
I don't think that it's, well, they do.
I don't know that it
Wetland
needs to be
delineations.
surveyed.
Just a rough,
Yeah,
like real,
right.
So you would hire somebody that's a certified biologist,
right?
and so they can rest on their licensure for providing you a report, but it doesn't require a survey.
Okay.
It needs to be,
Explicitly.
code requires those buffers to be shown on site plans and stuff like that.
To show the
to
100,
demonstrate,
150 or.
demonstrate you're in compliance with those critical area regulations.
Yeah, and if we were platting something, obviously that would end up being surveyed in that.
Has the tribe been involved in,
Take
This
notes.
so far?
We received comments from, Suquamish Tribe,
okay,
in response to our comp plan update, and they were very much geared toward the critical areas ordinance.
okay.
So once the draft was ready for public release in December, we forwarded a copy to the tribe. I am not aware that they've made any comments to
Okay.
the draft code at this point.
I'd like to get you guys out of here by 8:30, and we have
One more question.
another session, but go ahead.
How do we get a cool Port Orchard zippy?
Well, 3/4
Mr.
zip.
Fisk has, yeah.
Well,
No, you guys have a budget.
Yeah, fan gear downstairs.
Yeah. I like it.
I still have one from the old days.
They should come out, right?
Made out of wood.
I live in Olala, so.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, no, I'm born and raised in Port Orchard.
I hope we don't waste your time tonight, like.
You guys will touch this again in the summer.
This is I've never set my password, so this is all.
Right.
Thank you for your help.
That's a great word for it.
That was the other thing Nick mentioned.
Fine Arts Ladies
Are we doing
Yeah,
that?
so when we do
They
our
do all
lands
work.
master, we have to advertise our critical areas and then getting our
Just make sure, just work with Brandy, so she makes sure you guys have a budget, and everybody's not ordering all new wardrobes. All right, I'm bringing you guys back in.
places, but yeah, it has implications.
I'm trying.
I'd like to see now for the city, if you can have buffers, I don't know if it would show up.
Go to the order.
right now.
And I wanna get you guys,
Pretty busy one.
Jay's gotta go to the order.
Okay, I hope you're sitting down.
I am.
I filed my F1 today. It was painless. I did have to call them because they had to draw my 2023 forward to 2024, the old information. It was sweet.
Is it March first, those are due by March?
Yeah, they usually don't bug me until after March.
So they're due March first, so
Get them.
you're required to do them annually,
Annual.
and then, and you just go in and do an update.
Yep, it's great.
So I have something that's very.
Something else, Jim, please. We're trying to wrap up our meeting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good order. I liked your pick that you put out there, Chief Brown for the city. That was really cool. And then, my other thing was, I remember, when you wanted your topic tonight, I felt like, if we have a topic and then you give it for like a week in advance, I think that's great that one of us can just
So-
put it out there.
So you noticed in that process, I made sure there was at least 4 council members that, because remember, we're taking staff time and meeting time to do that. So that's when Jay asked to bring that forward, I looked to you guys and, is there 4 council members that wants to put this on agenda? So that's,
Yeah.
okay?
Chief Brown, do you mind if we use that, that photo for like a Zoom backdrop or whatnot?
Okay. All right, any other good of the order?
I'll be gone next week. Interestingly, I will be on a mountain in Japan at the same time Nick Bond.
That's crazy, huh?
And the other mountain he's going to, I'll be there at the same time.
Both skiing and or boarding, set down.
Skiing.
Yep.
I mean, now this.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I wonder if you'll see each other.
Okay,
Well,
I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. We're heading in the back for a closed session, for a collective bargaining session. So